What if you could skip endless hours of tutorials, YouTube videos, misinformation, and get straight to the core of what music production is really about? We all know there's a lot of misinformation out there, but I'm not here to say who's wrong and who's right. Instead, I'm just going to share what I've learned in the past decade and that is working for me, and to equip you with some actionable steps to take your music to the next level. So that's what today's video is about, sharing the most crucial insights that I've gained from a decade of producing music. I've been on the grind, watching tutorials day in, day out, and now I'm lucky enough to run my music business full time. And I'm able to share videos like this to help you succeed in your music. Don't worry if you're not a Logic Pro user, the tips and advice that I'm about to give you is for all those. New producers, intermediate, even seasoned vets might learn a thing or two, because sometimes you do forget because you take on so much information. So you might just get a little refresher. It's always nice to get a little reminder. All right, enough rambling, let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about, tip 1, is music theory. You might have heard that music theory is not important, that you don't need to know music theory. And that's true for some, but just imagine you move to a different country and there's a language barrier. Yeah, you might be able to wing it and get through day to day, but just imagine if you could speak the language. How far would that take you? And it's kind of the same with music theory. Just knowing the basics. I'm not saying you have to know all of music theory, but just understanding a few basics will really help you with your music. Let's move on to tip 2. Learn from released music. One of the best ways to level up as a music producer is to study music that's already out there. It's like reverse engineering a master plan, whether it's the way the drums are hitting, whether it's effects that's being used, arrangements, the space in the mix, the effects, how's the sounds complementing each other. This is something that I still do now, just listening to music, different genres, and just getting a taste of, just getting a better understanding of how they got to the final product. By studying this, it's really gonna take your music up a notch. I always do this. I'll hear something new and think, oh, I like the way they've done that. I can do that in my next beat or my next mix. If you pay attention, every pro level track will teach you something. So let's move on to tip number 3, sound selection, which kind of marries into what we were just talking about. Sound selection is important because if you're making rock, you've got your electric guitars, you've got certain sounds that will make it sound like rock. If you're doing R&B, certain sounds that's going to make it sound R&B, pads, pianos. So sound selection is important. It doesn't make sense to put a dubstep bass in a rock track. Just make sure you're making the right decisions when it comes to selecting your sounds. Think of it like building a house. You can't build a solid structure on weak bricks. If you're doing rap, the kicks have got to be hitting, the snares have got to be hitting. If you're doing rock, I don't think I've got many rock viewers, but there might be a few watching. The electric guitars are usually the most important. If I'm wrong, just drop a comment and educate me. And yeah, what I'm saying is genre dependent, so just do your research on the genres that you make and like to make and use that as a guideline. So that brings me on to tip 4, layering your sounds, layering especially your kicks. I know sometimes you can get caught up and wasting time sifting through all your different samples, trying to find the perfect kick or the perfect snare. So what I like to do, and what you can do, is find 2 kicks that complement each other. Maybe one with a bit more low end, a bit more subby, and then find another one with a bit more attack, and then just merge the 2 together. Bit of EQ, take out some low end of the top kick that's snappy, more snappy, and merge the 2, and then you've created a new kick. You can also use a bit of transient shaper on the top kick just to make it a bit more snappier. So that way it will cut through your mix. Tip 5, sidechain. Sidechain is commonly used for your kicks and your bass, just for the kick to cut through and for your bass to move out of the way. If you don't know what sidechain is, it's kind of like ducking sounds. So if you put a compressor on your bass and you sidechain it to the kick, every time your kick hits, it's going to punch through and make the kick more present. But sometimes you might not want to do that. You can use a multi-band compressor, which is more frequency based. So there might be just a little, I don't know, between 80 and 100 hertz that you want to notch out. You can use a multi-band compressor, something like Track Spacer or Pro MB, which I like to use a lot. Really does help. But not just talking about sidechaining kicks and bass. Use the sidechain to make your vocals more heard by sidechaining it to the pads or pianos or the guitars, and that way you're just creating space. Instead of using an EQ just to carve out and just notching out sound in the instrument, which might take away the beauty of the sound. So by sidechaining, By using Sidechain, you can get really creative. Tip 6, bus your reverbs. Instead of inserting a reverb on each individual track, just send a signal of that track to your reverb that's on the bus. That way, everything is going to have that same sound. It's like painting a sound with a brush and using that same brush on all these different sounds. Suddenly, we're all in the same space. Unless if for some reason it's creative why you're putting why you're inserting a reverb on that individual track, then that's cool. But bust your reverbs. So you don't need to drown every individual sound in reverb, leaving your CPU crying and crapping out and having all these different reverbs clashing and just making the sound a mess. You don't want that. So this kind of ties in tip 7, too many plugins. I've been guilty of it. I get some new stuff and I think, yeah, I've got to put that on there. I've got to put this one on there. I've got to try that. And then before you know it, I've got way too many plugins. And someone kindly said to me the other day, in one of my videos, you use too many plugins. And my response to that was, it's because I don't want one plugin to do too much heavy lifting. And in a way, they was right, because too many plugins can make your music sound a bit over-processed. Something that I'm learning and getting better at. So focus on mastering a few essential tools. It's like having a toolbox with a whole heap of tools that you don't really use, instead of having some real powerful tools that you know how to use. Tip number 8 is probably the biggest one that's helped me with my music production, and that's referencing tracks. So if you've ever wondered why pro tracks sound so wide, spacious, well-balanced, reference tracks ain't just for matching loudness. It's like a cheat sheet. It's really like a cheat sheet. So all you have to do is pull one into your DAW and compare it. My favorite tool for comparing or referencing tracks is Reference, plugin by Mastering the Mix. It's a quality plugin, not sponsored by them or anything, but if you can get your hands on that, definitely do that. I know there's a few others out there that does similar things, but with this one, it gives you some visuals on how your bass is, how your top end is, if it's too over compressed, if it's under compressed, and it's just a lovely way to just get your music sounding right, giving you that bit more confidence when you eventually bounce down your final mix or master. You can also tell as well what's happening in the stereo field, which is important. Some of my mixes, when I compare them, I notice that I've got too much going on in the mid, it's too wide, in the mids it's too wide, or the top end's too narrow. So yeah, quality, really good way to get your music up to a standard. Because I didn't used to use references, I was just winging it, just making music and just trying to make it sound how I thought it should sound. And then when I compared it to music that's out there, I was just confused, lost, thinking, why doesn't it sound the same? So yeah, if you can get that reference, go get it. Or if you're not using references, then definitely start using references. Number 9, mixing in mono. It sounds old school. Who listens to music in mono? Not many people. Phones nowadays, I don't know, my iPhone, it sounds like it's stereo. It's cool. I love the way it sounds. And there's a lot of people listening on headphones, a lot of people listening on phones. But what mixing in mono does for you is it narrows down the stereo field, obviously. This allows you to hear which sounds are your core sounds, which sounds disappear because you might have a phase issue, which sounds need to be a little bit louder or quieter. So it really does give you like a clear look on how your mix is going to sound. And when you do pop it back into stereo, amazing. So in Logic Pro, you can put the main bus into mono, or you can put a plugin on there to sum it down to mono. On my Apollo Twin, there's a button that you can press just to put it in mono. It really does help you to hear what's going on. Tip 10, I want to talk a little bit about your organization of your files. When your session is chaotic, you're not making music, you're just managing chaos. Label your tracks, color code them, set up session templates that you use every time. If you've created a beat, you've done a mix that you absolutely love, remove what you don't need, save it as a template. I do this all the time and it really does help to speed up your workflow. So when I first started, I used to name my beats by the date that I created it. It's not good. It's not the way to do things. Then I quickly learned that by giving the beat a name actually helps when an artist buys the beat to give them some inspiration on a concept, an idea of what to write. So it inspires them. If you're stuck for names, titles, just have a look around. There's inspiration everywhere. Look at titles from other sources and be creative. Tip 11, constantly challenge yourself. Comfort zones kill creativity. Every time you produce a track and it sounds the same as the last, you're stuck in neutral. Push yourself, try new genres, new instruments, new techniques. It's like going to the gym. The more you challenge your muscles, the stronger you get. Same with your creativity. Number 12, understanding the business side. Making good music is only half the battle. You need to know about branding, networking, getting your music on platforms. Don't ignore this part because this will help you to get your music heard. If it's money that you're trying to make from music, then there's a lot of money on the table. You just have to know how to collect it. Tip 13, done is better than perfect. Listen, perfection is the enemy of progress. Every producer has hard drives full of unfinished ideas. The trick is to finish tracks. This really helped me to progress and take my music up a notch. I know I say it all the time with all these different tips, but it really, when you put all these things together, it does. Finishing tracks instead of obsessing over it being perfect is you're gonna learn a lot more, way more than obsessing over one track. They say you learn through failure. So by just completing tracks, you're honing your skills, you're getting used to finishing tracks, you're getting used to deadlines, and you're getting better at the same time. It's about developing the habit of finishing. Drop a comment below, let me know which one of these tips resonated with you, or if there's anything that you're doing now that's really helped you to level up. Appreciate you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.